Greetings all Super Sundays here in the Holy Land, the Holy Apple, the Holy Hilltop, Tal Binyamin. We are on the 7th day of the 7th month, Tishrei 5783. And this will be, with God's help, this will be our last class before the Sukkot break. And then hopefully with God's help we shall return after that. Just want to tell you some up-to-date, real-time news, just to understand the desecration of God's name and the danger that the government of Israel is putting its inhabitants, its residents, the Jewish residents in. This morning at approximately 7 a.m. between Elon Moreh and Itamar. I live in Elon Moreh, and Itamar is exactly 9 kilometers from Elon Moreh, so in the middle, about 4 or 5 kilometers from my house. The Arabs, once again, they shot at a Jewish bus that was traveling by at 7 o'clock. One Jew, unfortunately, was injured. This is the fourth shooting in the last couple of weeks, not at that spot, but in the from the Tapuach Junction to a village called Chawara, which is about 8-kilometer strip. There have been 3 shootings at Jews in the last couple of weeks, and it is really amazing to see that the shops, the Arab shops, hundreds of shops in Chawara are still open. There has been no closure. There has been no the inhabitants of Chawara, the Arabs, are allowed to roam the streets and go to work, and there is no lockdown, zero, zilch. I mean, it's like we're waiting for Jews to be murdered over here. Not that I have a lot of belief in even in such a situation. I do not believe that really anything would be done for a long period of time. Of course, there's always the Hollywood, Hollywood plays that they pull as if they're doing something, and then it just, fizzles out after that. So we're in a lot of hot water, not just us here in this part of Eretz Yisrael, but all of the Jews in the land of Israel. Unfortunately, our lives have been put out, endangered by the governments of Israel throughout the years, and it's getting a lot worse, and from a lot of different directions, north, south, east, west, etc. So really amazing. My wife, I also saw this myself, but when I was coming here, you see in a Arab village 4 kilometers from Elon Moreh called Beit Furik, you see the Arabs, hundreds of Arabs throwing rocks at the army, and not even afraid of anything. They're just out there. Most of them are not masked. They don't have any covering on their face, and they're just like throwing. The army runs a little bit forward, they move back, the Arabs move forward, and it's really amazing to see it. And this apparently has been going on for a couple of hours. And believe me, if the army wanted to, if they received an order to put an end to it, the end would be put to it in a matter of minutes, this whole story. For it to be going on for a couple of hours, this is a tremendous desecration of God's name. And unfortunately, we the Jewish people are paying the price for this Erev Rav regime. Okay, with that said, our class today, you saw the video. You could, if you're able to, I would advise to go through it. It's about 13 minutes. We just put on a minute of it, but it is still really revolting. It's blasphemy. A person wearing a kippah in that video. It's really mind-blowing that a person who considers himself religious can make such statements, talking about Abraham basically walked. Now, all he did was walk. You know, he was like one of these marathon guys, one of these joggers. What was that guy's name? Jim Fox personalities. He was just like walking or running through the land of Israel. The prophet Abraham, he just was walking around. Unifying with worshippers of idols, the Christians, just revolting. To say maybe you're right, maybe we're wrong. Millions, perhaps billions of Jews went to their death because they believed 100%, not maybe they were right, but they 100% that they were correct in their belief. And this clown, that's the nicest word I could come up with, because I have a lot of other words, but I'm going to hold myself back from saying those pronouns. But what he could say, make such a statement, that maybe you're right, maybe we're wrong, maybe you're right. The 13 principles laid down by Maimonides, we believe with entire faith in the Torah that it is true, etc. The other 13 principles, we believe in an entire faith. And he comes around telling us, maybe you're right, maybe we're wrong. And unifying, let's pray together, let's sit down together, let's talk together, let's learn together. And in the name of the holiday of Sukkot, the Feast of Tabernacles. So let's get a lot of things straight. This is a very, very important video. So listen to it. Listen to it a couple of times and spread the word. Because this holiday, I can't say the most, but it's really been misrepresented. It's really been forged, this holiday. It's become a universal, the uniting between us and the nations, coming together, loving each other. Despicable. So let's get a lot of these points straight. First of all, since 1955, the IDF, the army, the Israeli army, established a 4-day march to Jerusalem. During that time, in 1955, 200 soldiers participated and 70 civilians. In 1957, the Jerusalem March was turned into a popular public event. 5,000 marching soldiers and civilians were there. By 1966, 15,000 participants. In 1968, the IDF Chief of Staff Mordechai Gur reduced the march to 3 days. In 2003, the various Christian organization, International Christian Embassy, joined the march, and today, 20 years later, exactly, it's really been taken over by Christians and Christian organizations. So I read an article from the Jerusalem Post. Some 17,000 Christian evangelicals from more than 100 countries took part, along with thousands of locals, in a demonstration of color, music, and flags on Thursday in the annual Jerusalem Feast of Tabernacles March. The parade is one of the central events of the International Christian Embassy in Jerusalem, the ICEJ annual celebration in Israel. Dozens of national delegations assembled in Jerusalem's soccer park, dressed in their national costumes and carrying their national flags. They wended their way through the streets of the capital, Jerusalem, down through Liberty Bell Park, next to the German colony neighborhood. Delegations from locations ranging from the U.S. to Philippines, from the United Kingdom, South Africa, countless places in between. The Feast of Tabernacles event is a 5-day celebration for the evangelical Christians that take place during Sukkot because of the Bible's mention and inclusion of non-Jews in the holiday ceremonies. During the Feast of Tabernacles, or Sukkot, the Jewish people were to gather together in Jerusalem, not only to remember God's provisions in the wilderness, but also to look forward to the promised Messianic age when all the nations will flow to the city to worship the Lord, the ICEJ stand. Now when they say Lord, they ain't talking about Hashem, they're talking about JC. Pastor Eliana Cabral, who was born in Brazil and became a U.S. citizen, for the last 26 years a participant in this march, is in Israel for the 6th time. She said she was supportive of the Jewish state because of the Bible's injunction to love the people of Israel and to hasten the coming of Jesus as the Messiah. You heard it here. We are supporting and praying for Israel because if Israel is strong, then it will help bring Jesus for the 2nd time. We are coming because we want to bring the Lord, who is Jesus, to the people of Israel. Praise the Lord. Eunice Jones, also from the U.S., but originally from the Philippines, she said she was here by the grace of God. Once again, God not meaning Hashem, but you know who, JC. And has come to show love for the people, to pray for them, to bless them, and to join in fellowship with the people. So beautiful, uniting with the Christians. Jews and the Christians uniting. Beautiful. Said Jones, we believe that God has chosen Israel as the chosen people, and that this land here is where He is going to come in the end. Jesus, the Messiah. We're waiting for the Jesus Messiah, whether it's the first time for the Jews or the 2nd time for the Christians. A number of Jewish religious leaders have called for Jews to avoid the ICEJ event, saying the organization is looking to convert Jews to Christianity. However, officials from the group insist that they have a policy against proselytizing in Israel. Yuck, yuck, yuck. Yeah. Okay. In the prayers that we've said, I'm talking about the Ashkenazim in the last week, what's called Slichot. The 12th Slicha, written by Rabbi Gershom, the son of Yehudah, better known as Rabbeinu Gershom, the light of the diaspora. He lived in the 11th century in Germany. He wrote this 12th prayer in our Slichot. Look it up. It says there, the oppressive enemy, talking about the Christians, is pushing your precious ones, the Jews, to exchange your hope for a man-made faith. How long, O Hashem, must I call out from the straits? Man-made faith. And this Jew with a kippah on his head, maybe you're right, maybe we're correct. So, Jewish law requires Jews to submit to death rather than renounce their faith. Indeed, entire Jewish communities in Germany and France gave up their lives to sanctify God's name. But some individuals were unable to withstand the test. Rabbi Gershom's only son, who was compelled to convert to Christianity, and then soon died afterwards without having an opportunity to return to his faith. Rabbi Gershom observed a 2-week period of mourning. 1 week for the loss of his life, son's life, and 1 week for the loss of his son's soul. To the Christians, who we must unite and build centers in the land of Israel and pray with them in the same circles. Amazing. Or today's reading. Yes, today in the morning, I read a part of the 69th Slicha. And this answer, I say to my antagonist, it is beneath me to forget or to abandon the praise of my Father's God, that impure dead one, the new God recently come. Once again, impure, JC, impure, dead one, a new quote-unquote God recently come. Of course, most of these were censored for many generations. We gave you the uncensored version. Okay, so let's roll up our sleeves and get right into it. Holiday of Sukkot, Feast of the Tabernacles. Is it a time of uniting with the Christians, with the nations, as we know them today, as with their beliefs of today? So, let's get in and see, yes, there is a connection between the nations of the world and Sukkot. That is undeniable. But we will straighten this out. We will make it perfectly crystal clear exactly what the holiday of Sukkot represents. Crystal clear. 100%. No room for error here. Okay, so let's talk about the connections between the Jews and the nations. We have the 70 bulls. Do not be mistaken by the Chicago Bulls. Let's not get the NBA involved in this. 70 bulls. The Jewish people on every Sukkot in the temple in Jerusalem, in the Beit HaMikdash, they sacrificed 70 bulls, protecting the nations of the world. This could be found in the Tractate of Sukkah, page 55b. Rabbi Yochanan adds, "Woe unto the nations that have destroyed the temple, and they do not know, they do not realize and understand and comprehend what they have destroyed. They have shot themselves in their legs, in their own legs. Now that they destroyed the temple, they have no form, no way of venue for atonement. They have destroyed the temple and the altars and the sacrifices, shooting themselves in the legs. There is no more atonement for them." Rashi, on this tractate in Talmud, Sukkot is the beginning, in the land of Israel, it is the beginning of the rain season. That is when we ask for rain. Therefore, the Jews prayed for the nations of the world that their sins would be atoned for in order that they would benefit from the rain, because without water, you're dead. So we see a connection. Rashi, the great commentator on the Torah, in Numbers 29 chapter, verse 18, Rashi points out a very interesting phenomena. When we look at the sacrifices of the 70 bulls, it goes down. As the 7 days of Sukkot proceed, the bulls go down. Of course, once again, not the Chicago Bulls were always in first place, but the bulls, as far as the sacrifices, the first day is 13, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7. Why is there a decline? We know in Judaism there is a principle, a foundation, that we always are going up in holiness. 1, 2, we light the candles on Hanukkah. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Not 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Holiness is always moving forward. Never in neutral and never in reverse. So Rashi says an amazing statement. Why do the bulls decrease? Why do the sacrifice for the nations decrease? This is a sign. This is a sign for the nations. This is a sign for the Jewish people. What is the sign? That the strength of these nations are declining until they will be destroyed. An amazing thing. Listen to that one more time by Rashi. In the Midrash Tanchuma, the portion of Pinchas, chapter 16, paragraph 14, based on Psalms 109. Instead of loving us, they hate us. What's this talking about? Who's they and who's us? Israel says to God, the nation should love us, for we sacrificed 70 bulls for them. Instead of loving us, they hate us. Zechariah speaks about the end of days in chapter 14, from verses 12 till 20. This is also the Haftarah that is read on Sukkot. It talks about that there will be a plague upon the nations that do not go up to Jerusalem on Sukkot. Now, many people, our title of the class is the Jerusalem Christian March, a prophecy fulfilled? Question mark. If you look from 2003, we see thousands of Christians coming up on Sukkot. Is this a fulfillment of prophecy? The Jerusalem March, which has been taken over, hijacked by the Christians. Is that what the prophet had in mind? Ho ho! Stay tuned, folks. This is bizarre. We know that the Gentiles have 7 commandments that were given to Noah originally. We know that it is not one of the 8 commandments to come up to Jerusalem. What in the world is the prophet Zechariah talking about? That the nations that are left must come up to Jerusalem. It's not one of the 7 commandments. What exactly is going on here? Question mark. And another source of ours tells us in the Talmud, Tractate Avodah Zarah, page 3, side 8, before the coming of the Messiah, the nations of the world will complain, why are the Jews going to be rewarded? Give us a commandment. So God says, no problem. And of all folks, out of all 613 cards, God pulls out the joker on them. What's the joker card? He pulls out the holiday of the Sukkot, the Feast of the Tabernacles. He says, you do that commandment. You build a sukkah and you sit in it. And they sit in it and it becomes hot and they leave and they kick, one of these Bruce Lee kung fu kicks or David Carradine, wah, boom, and they just kick the sukkah down. So they failed the test. But once again, very interesting. The nations of the world, God gives them a test of the sukkah. So we see, summarizing, we see the 70 bulls, a connection between us and the nations. We see in Zechariah the prophecy that the nations that are left in the end of days will have to come up to Jerusalem. And we see in the Talmud Avodah Zarah, we see that the final test of the nations that are left will be the Sukkah. So we definitely see a connection as compared to the other holidays, the other Jewish holidays, where there is much, almost no mention or participation of the nations of the world. So let's see exactly what this is all about. Okay. The amazing Gra, Rabbi Eliyahu of Vilna, in his book Divrei Eliyahu, portion of Pinchas, beginning of the words on the 15th day of the month of Tishrei. Listen to what he says. Amazing. This is prophetic. During the 7 days of Sukkot, there are two expressions used. This is a translation I'm using from the Stone Edition. Okay, in Hebrew, there are two expressions. During the 7 days of Sukkot, when we bring the 70 bulls, there are two expressions used. One is Seir, and one is Seirizim, translated by Stone. One male of the goats, and the other is a he-goat. So you have, once again, you have male of the goats. I guess this is the real, tough, rough male of the goats. And then you have a he-goat. Sounds much more calm, cool, and collected, the 3 C's. So you see, amongst the 7 days, those expressions are divided. And if you count up the bulls on the day that the word the he-goat is mentioned, you will come up to the number 35. If you count up, take out your calculators or take out your fingers and do the calculations there. We're on towards the end of Numbers, Pinchas, chapter 29, 18, around there. Count the amount of bulls when it uses the expression male of the goats. M-A-L-E, of course. It's also 35 bulls. There is an equality here. So, the Gra points that out, which is an amazing in itself. But what does that mean? What does that mean? So the Gra goes on to continue to explain. When the Torah uses the expression the he-goat, or Seir, this is referring to the nation of Esav, i.e., the Esav was the founder and the patriarch figure of the Christian world. And when it uses the expression male of the goats, this is referring to the nation of Ishmael, Islam. So once again, there are 35 bulls that are sacrificed for the nation of Esav, for the non-Jewish world. And there are 35 bulls that are sacrificed for Ishmael, for the non-Jewish world of Esav, the non-Jewish world of Ishmael. And together, the two leaders of the 70 nations are Esav and Ishmael. So basically, this is written in many, many sources, there are not 70 nations like people are accustomed to think about. There are 72 nations. 72 nations. Because the father figures of 35 are Ishmael, and the father figure of the other 35 nations are Esav. So there's 72. And then the Gra continues. These two nations, Esav and Ishmael, i.e., Christianity and Islam, will be eliminated from the world. Will be eliminated from the world. You heard it here. What will be left? So once again, the patriarch figures of Esav and Ishmael, as the history progressed, it turned in that Esav represented, later on, represented the Christian world, and Ishmael later on represented Islam, 1600 years ago. They will be destroyed. So what's left? So the Gra continues. The other nations that will be left, they are those that they derived their power. They are offshoots of these two superpowers of Yishmael, Esav, Christianity, and or Islam. They received their sustenance. That's a good way to put it. Their basic sustenance came originally from those figures, from Christianity, from Islam. That is where their sustenance originated. But now, the two head figures, Christianity and Islam, are gone. And their only way to survive, these other nations that are still around, that have not been punished, remember the words of Rashi. He says, why is there a decline in the amount of bulls? First day 13, second day 12, 11, till we get to 7. Why is there a decline? This is a sign of the future. This is a sign of the destruction of the nations. All nations know. Just the two major superpowers, the Christian and Muslim world. But there will be individuals or individuals of various nations that will remain. And their only way to survive will be to subjugate themselves to the Jewish people, attach themselves to the Jewish people, subjugate themselves, understand that they are, so to speak, in a good light, they are servants to the Jewish people. They want to connect with the Jewish people. They are the righteous Gentiles. They are the observers of the 7 commandments. That is what is left. That is what we're talking about. Now, the sources for this Gra, Rabbi Eliyahu of Vilna, where he talks about, where he did the calculations 35-35, representing Esav, representing Yishmael, and as the years passed, it became Christianity, it became the Islam. This idea of destruction of the major 2 super religions, this could be found in Yalkut Shimoni, in the book of the prophets, 549, or Drashot Haran, his 5th sermon, beginning with the words Ve'od Sivev. Number 3, the Maharsha, who has a commentary on the Talmud. You could look it up in Ein Yaakov, the book Ein Yaakov, page. It's on Tractate Bava Batra, page 10, side B. Zohar Kadosh, look it up. The Holy Zohar on Exodus, book of Exodus, page 32, side A. Yonatan ben Uziel, one of the prize students of Hillel, based on a verse on Numbers 23:10. Check it out there, where they're talking about the destruction of these 2 super power religions. Okay, the Ramchal, Rabbi Moshe Chaim Luzzatto, originally from Italy, ended up in the land of Israel. he was around from 1706 to 1744. He did not live a long life. In his work, Mamar HaChochmah, page 1, listen to what he writes. Listen closely. This subject has been so perverted, as we saw in the opening video, really amazing, that religious Jews believe this stuff. And there's no crystal clear understanding what in the world is the holiday of Sukkot got to do with the nations of the world and the Jewish people. So, he writes on page 1, in this world there is good and evil. And amongst the people there is Israel and the other nations. Good, evil, Israel and the nations. The fixing of the world, Tikkun Olam. Look at all those organizations. There are such losers. There are people that call themselves, the only 2 Hebrew words they probably know is Tikkun Olam, where they try to go to bed with every religion and kudzi up to every foreign worship. We are Tikkun Olam. So the Ramchal, Rabbi Moshe Chaim Luzzatto, explaining us, the fixing of the world will occur only when the Jews are ruling over the nations and the nations of the world are subjugated to the Jewish people below them. This is a win-win situation, my words. This is good for the entire world. This is good for the Jewish people. The Jews will go unbelievable, will tower in holiness, in spirituality, in goodness, in kindness. And those nations that have latched onto the Jewish people and taken a back seat and subjugated themselves to the Jewish people, they will, in the words of the Ramchal, they will benefit from this light of the Jewish people. So it's a win-win situation. On the other hand, if the Gentiles are subjugating the Jewish people, this is bad for the Jews, of course, who are being subjugated, but it's also terrible for the nations of the world. So folks, get this. Sukkot, Feast of the Tabernacles, represents a time when the nations of the world, it's a wake-up call for the nations of the world. What's the wake-up call? The wake-up call for them is an appreciation, a realization that the Jewish people are their lifeline. The Jewish people are their lifeline. And they represent, that is why they must come to the understanding that the Jews are sacrificing 70 bulls so that we will have rain, so we will be able to survive, we will have food, we will be able to plant our fields and survive and not die. That is the holiday of Sukkot. It's a realization. It's coming together. What's coming together? Coming together in understanding that the nations of the world must realize on the holiday of Sukkot that their lifeline comes from the Jewish people. Without the Jewish people, they're goners, they're dead. And the nations must learn, when they come up to Jerusalem and they see the order of the bulls being sacrificed, 13, 12, 11, declining, they must realize that they must bow their heads, and they must realize that they must subjugate themselves, just like a decline of the bulls. They must also decline their pride and false beliefs in foreign gods, foreign worshiping. And that is the lesson. So number one, first lesson, understand that your lifeline depends on the Jewish people. So latch onto those Jewish people, not in order to convert them, not in order to bring them JC, but in order to realize, to have humility. Put your head down. Remove the foreign idols that you worship. And understand, number one, that your lifeline of rain, of food, goes to the Jewish people. Latch onto the Jewish people in becoming righteous Gentiles. Number two, to understand that in order to connect to the Jewish people, and in order for you to receive light, God's light, then it has to be in the order of the Jewish people ruling, the Jewish people on top, and you, the righteous of the world, connecting to the Jewish people, understanding the difference in levels in my 7 commandments, understanding that we are with the Jewish people, and the Jewish people are our leaders, and we are their servants in a positive manner. This is brought down, this idea of appreciation, the nations appreciating, or the nations lowering themselves, just as the bulls lower themselves, the number, the amount lower. This idea is brought down by the rabbi of a town in Ukraine called Hositan. He was born in 1878, and he passed away in Eretz Yisrael, in the land of Israel, in 1956. In his book, Oel Yaakov, page 524, that is why the nations of the world that do not understand this concept of appreciation to the Jewish people, understanding the Jews are our lifeline. Number two, understanding that the Jews have the real God, and we must eliminate, we must destroy our foreign gods, our foreign worships. One of the 7 commandments, not worshiping idols. We must destroy our foreign worship. So, those that do not understand this lesson, they will be destroyed by the plague. This is the words of the Rebbe of the Ukraine, of Hosiatan. And we go further. Abraham, during the holiday of Sukkot, Abraham is our first guest. And there's a deep reason why he's our first guest, because Abraham is the foundation of Judaism. He is our first forefather. Abraham, more than anyone, Jacob, Isaac, Moses, you name it, more than anybody else, the person that represents uprooting, idol worshiping. Abraham, more than anyone else, represents uprooting, idol worshiping. He was willing to give of his life. The king of Babylonia threw him into a fire because he broke his father's idols. He did not continue in the path of lies that his forefathers traveled. No, he broke all those idols. And that is the whole idea of Sukkot. Sukkot represents a divide, a division between the Jewish people and foreign worshiping. It is a time of division. And that's why we're not going to go into it, but I'll just touch on it for 60 seconds. Another amazing gra, Rabbi Eliyahu of Vilna, he writes that why do we celebrate, a famous question, why do we celebrate the Sukkot in the month of Tishrei if it reminds us of our travels in the desert? We should be doing it when we left Egypt. That's when we should be doing the holiday. So the Gra comes up with an amazing calculation that the clouds of glory came back to the Jewish people in a higher level on the 15th day of the month of Tishrei, which is Sukkot. And dearest friends, these clouds of glory, look it up in Exodus, look it up in the portion of Ki Tisa. Also in the Talmud, we discuss this was the Moses asked for a special present from God after God forgave us for the golden calf. And then on the 15th day, the clouds of glory returned to the Jewish people, these forms of Sukkot. And that's why we have the holiday on the 15th day on Sukkot. But he asked for another blessing from God to separate us, between us and the nations. No prophecy amongst the nations, etc. The divine presence only amongst the Jewish people. So, to tell you the truth, Sukkot is big time, is a dividing line, is a division, is a separation between the Jewish people and the nations of the world. However, it is a binding part for those religious, for those righteous Gentiles who understand, got the message, and understand that their lifeline is not from JC, God forbid. That brings destruction to the world. Belief in JC. That brings tragedy, travesty to the world. They understand that, and they rid themselves. Those are the survivors. We talked about Esav and Ishmael, Christianity and Islam. They will be destroyed. They will be destroyed on Sukkot. And the only ones left will be those that received originally their sustenance from those superpower religions and went on the path of truth and broke all those idols from their heritage. So this is an amazing thing. So the first day of Sukkot, our guest in our sukkah is Abraham. Abraham, more than all of the other 6 other guests during Sukkot, represents an uprooting, a fighting, a destroying of idol worshiping. And that is exactly what the holiday of Sukkot is to going up to Jerusalem, the nations of the world, to go up and to understand your lifeline, to understand that you are second, you are in the back seats to the Jewish people, and the Jewish way, the Jewish Torah, the Jewish God is the only truthful. The God of Israel is the God of the world. This is brought down, this concept of Abraham being the first guest and fighting against idol worshipping is brought down in the book called Cincinnati Chaim. Not Cincinnati, but Cincinnati Chaim on page 556. Now, everything should make sense. We have a prophecy in Zechariah, chapter 8. It says, verse 23, thus says Hashem, Master of Legions, in those days it will happen, the final days, it will happen that 10 men of all different languages of the nations will take hold of the corner of the garments of a Jewish man, saying, let us go with you, for we have heard that God is with you. And the Talmud says in Tractate Shabbat 32b that there will be servants of the Jewish people when they realize, when they understand that God is with the Jewish people, that the true God is only the God of Israel, and none of these foreign, man-made gods like JC or Muhammad. May their names be erased. None of that. And therefore the Talmud says that each Jew will have 28, because if you do the calculations, 10 representatives of the 70 nations, it's 700 on each corner of the four-corner garment of the tzitzit. So 700 times 4 is 2,800. Every Jew will have a 2,800 servants, people that are holding on to the garment of the Jewish people, because they realize the truth is with us, not this joker at the beginning video. There, maybe you're right, maybe we're right, maybe you're right, maybe we're... Disgusting, blasphemy. And so we understand now, where are these servants going to come from? Doesn't Rashi say that the nations will be destroyed? The decline of the bulls on the holiday of Sukkot, that is a sign that their end, the destruction, is coming near. Right, but that is only the superpower religions. They will be destroyed. However, those righteous people will continue, and they will connect with the Jewish people. So, therefore, those are the people that are coming up on Sukkot, because they understand their lifeline. They understand who the true God is. Not a joke of the Jerusalem March that has turned into this JC, Christian. It's amazing. If you look at that first video, look at the shirts those people are wearing. It says JC on it. And look at the channel that the video is. Tzvi, what was it called? Journey with Jesus. Yes, a journey. Look at it. Look at the icon, the channel. Those are the people that he's dancing with and praying with. And another verse in Isaiah chapter 61, verse 5. Thank you, Tomer Devorah, for this. It says, foreigners will stand and tend your flocks, and the sons of the strangers will be your plowmen and your vineyard workers. Who are these people? We're not talking about these Christians that come today and trying to bring the message to JC. That's not what it means, these verses. They throw that one out a lot. That is talking about the righteous Gentiles that will remain after the holiday of Sukkot. Those that will be destroyed. The false religions that will be destroyed, Christianity, Islam, they're out of it. They're gone. And those that remain, those righteous will be the plowmen. Those righteous Gentiles will be working the vineyards. Because imagine like, just get this in your mind. Imagine you could work in the White House. I mean, actually today it's not really, no one really want to work in the White House. But imagine with your famous movie star, or your TV star, or your sports star, you could, be in his house helping clean up. Man, I would take that any day, to be with your star. That they call them idols also. Not for nothing they call them. But last but not least, folks, we're not finished. The TKO has not arrived yet, but now it's coming your way. And amazing. In a book titled Where are you hiding? Ooh. Sorry, I didn't bring it with me. I'll try to put it in the comments where you can find it. An amazing thing. We know the Talmud teaches us, and it's brought down in Halacha, there are 2 times we have to take out the wine for Shabbos, for Saturday. One is when Friday night, when we come back from the prayers, we pull out and we make Kiddush. And there we talk about the redemption from Egypt. And we must include redemption. And we also must take a cup of wine at the end of the Sabbath, the Talmud and the Jewish law teaches us. And the question that this sage asked was, okay, I understand that when we accept upon ourselves, when we bring in the Sabbath, I understand we take out a glass of wine and we talk about the redemption, Sabbath being a catalyst of bringing the redemption. But when we say goodbye, when we part our ways from the Holy Sabbath on Saturday night, there is no mention of redemption. And this rabbi comes and he hits the ball out of the park, and it's still flying out there. And he says the following: it does say redemption. Why? Because when you say in the Havdalah, the separation, when you talk about separation between the Jews and the Gentiles, that is the key to redemption. Separation. Not making farms, not making groups and interfaith and meeting places. No, separation is redemption. And he brings an amazing idea. If you take the numerical value, the gematria of the word Havdalah, and the numerical value of Geulah, it comes to exactly the same numerical value if you include the word Havdalah. You come out to 45, including the word of Havdalah. In Hebrew it's called Ima Kolel, and that is 100% legit. That is an entire different class, but it's very important. So this is an amazing thing. There are Jews, even those with kippot on, and some rabbis that call themselves religious, who are trying to sell us let's get together with the Christians or the Muslims. The key to the redemption of the Jewish people is separation. Just like we say when we separate, when we depart from the Holy Sabbath on Saturday night. God, you have differentiated, you have separated the Jewish people from the nations of the world. That is the lesson. That is the lesson of the holiday of Sukkot. Not the perversion that it has been turned in today as some kind of fulfillment of a prophecy of Zechariah. That's not what Zechariah was talking about. All these nations that are coming in the name of JC and to convert the Jewish people, and they encouraging the Jewish people to come to the land of Israel and building the temple. Why? So in mass they will convert. They will convert all the Jewish people to JC. That's what it's all about. That has nothing to do with the holiday of Sukkot. These people will be destroyed. The only ones that will remain, of course, are the Jewish people. And those righteous Gentiles that stick and hold on to the 7 commandments and hold on to the Jewish people. So folks, spread the message, because this holiday has really been butchered by the best of them. Keep the faith.